All right, so welcome back to another episode of SFA News Live right here from the Winter Fancy Food Show. Of course, we are continuing our coverage on day 2, and I've got Courtney Reum here with M13. Great to have you, Courtney.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
All right, so M13, intriguing name.
Yes.
Where does all this coming from?
It is the brightest cluster of stars in the Western Hemisphere.
I like it.
Whereby the sum of the whole shines greater than the individual part. So it's this idea of kind of putting the pieces together, connecting the dots, which is really what we endeavor to do at M13.
Astrological foresight.
Yes, we were doing it just before it became trendy to do astrological foresight, but yes, it's good timing.
I like that.
And it kind of has a little of that MI6 meets Men in Black.
Right. Okay, so let's get into a little bit about your background, kind of what got you interested in food startups. And, because you guys do a lot of things. You do some, I heard, brand building, some tech startups.
Exactly. We have, M13 is kind of a consumer tech platform, or I guess you could call it a holding company. And so we have a couple $100 million consumer tech focused fund. And then we also have a brand studio where we launch our own brands or brands in partnership with other people.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So when you look at food and the industry, obviously specialty food is one of the hot zones for. When you look at the entire food ecosystem, this is kind of where all the innovation is happening. So what are you seeing out there that's really kind of intriguing you, exciting you?
Sure. Well, I should probably preface by saying I kind of tend to be looking at trends always versus kind of, brands that have been around for a while. And so I think the first thing is just efficacy. For a long time, a lot of brands have made a lot of claims and we just didn't have the technology or the ability to kind of get those messages out. I think consumers are getting smarter. The first thing a lot of people do is flip over and look at a label, and that doesn't just mean calories, that means ingredients, that means that sort of thing. So I think it's efficacy. I think related but a little different is clean ingredients. I think people are asking for that. I think people are looking, even if you're someone that doesn't focus on things that are not processed or minimally processed, I think you do want clean ingredients. So I think that's what I really see that people are asking for.
So the demand there, I think, is coming obviously from the consumer, where they're looking, obviously their access to infinite information, really kind of looking at what they're eating, putting it in their bodies. So there's a lot of that movement and shift. A lot of that has kind of started from the millennial, I'll call it that millennial demographic that kind of has got the rest of us on our game now about what we're eating. When you look at startups today or just early stage companies, what are some of the things that you're looking for that kind of align with those principles that are happening in consumer trends today?
Yeah, I think, you just kind of hit on a great point, which is that I think I see millennials who, despite some who have very little disposable income, yet will spend an outsized percentage of that on food.
Right.
And it's what kind of got me interested in, I started my career as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs in consumer products. And what got me interested in consumer products is that they were part of our everyday life. And what got me interested in food is that, it's probably the number one thing that leads to the, the quality of your life, the quality of the food you eat and eating for that. So, I think it's really interesting to see the macro trends around things like cloud kitchens and food delivery, right? So I think we live in this world now where you're going to have a chance to have everything you ever wanted delivered. And now you have to make a choice, where you want to get that from and how much transparency you want to have. Because I hate to say it, but it is a little bit of a race to the bottom with food delivery and those sort of things, because it's great for the consumer, but who kind of foots the bill? Because I can't get you a piece of grass-fed, non-GMO, this or that to your door in less than an hour and make any margin on it. And I think that's where the trick is kind of coming in. So I think there's a lot that's going to be coming around those. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on around GMOs. You can't say GMO and have a negative or positive reaction. The devil's kind of in the details, because there's, I think, good things going on with genetically modified foods, and then there's bad things. And so it's just very contextual. But the last trend that I'm really interested in, that I've been looking here a little bit about, is every human being's so different, right? We're 99.9% similar, yet we're all very different. So I think there's going to be a lot that's going on with food-based diet and nutrition around kind of your DNA, like
so
that
more personalization,
super personalization. And I think it's a little bit like, saying AI or data. It's a good buzzword. No one's really doing it yet. I think it's starting to come based on technology, but it's still a little ways off.
Well, that kind of segues into a good topic here, and that is food technology. So we've been watching food tech, ag tech, in the industry. Here's my question is, with the amount of new products that are hitting the market, the number of companies that you're probably seeing in terms of observation and trying to pick the players, is there enough innovation happening to kind of keep pace with kind of this entire food reset that we're going through right now? Or do you feel like we are severely undermanned? What's your thought on that?
I think it's a little bit of both, in that the good news is I think people from all walks of life, as someone that straddles consumer and technology,
Right.
I have seen what I'll call the pure play technology players have a ton of interest in food. And, you know, a product like a Beyond Meat has made tech people extra interested in food. You know, regardless of how you think it's valued vis-a-vis its stock price, it's been a great thing for just visibility and people seeing that there's a demand for it. And if you would ever told me 5 years ago I'd watch a commercial this morning for Burger King on TV and have them lead with the Impossible Whopper, I'd say you're crazy. So it's been great to get a lot of attention. You know, I'm on the board of a company called Good Catch that's kind of like Beyond Meat for seafood. So it's seafoodless seafood or plant-based seafood. And it's where I think it's all going, but you know, you definitely have to raise a lot of money. They just announced a $32 million Series B. You know, whether it's Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat or Good Catch, it's not a category where, you know, it's for the faint of heart, because to really do it right, I think you have to raise a lot of money. And, you know, the first generation of plant-based things, I think the focus is, okay, there's no meat in it. Can we make it taste like a hamburger or cheeseburger or whatever? The next wave has to be doing all that, yet making sure the ingredients are clean and healthy, because it's great to not eat meat, but if you're putting a lot of GMOs in there or too much sodium or other things, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I think that's the next evolution of all these plant-based diets.
Yeah, so it's going to have to, so the innovation is definitely going to be ramping up, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I guess the question, because today you've got, you know, a handful, let's just stay in the meat category without going into seafood. You've got Memphis Meats, Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods.
Tyson.
Those are kind of the big guys. In 2 or 3 years, we could have 25 of those companies. So the innovation that's going to be needed to kind of support that infrastructure that essentially is supplanting our food system is going to be massive. So I can't imagine that tech isn't pouring dollars into this space. What are you seeing in terms of the pulse of the business? I
think they are. I think people also realize that if you're, you know, one of the incumbent meat companies, you have a great advantage in terms of distribution and everything else, and shelf space where you know, command more space. Where I think there's also going to be a lot in. So I think a lot of people are obviously looking at plant-based meats or starting to be plant-based seafoods. Where I think it's interesting to look is putting technology into, you said, the agricultural side. I think the farming side. You know, let's not forget the first part of a plant-based diet is to eat more plants. It's not necessarily to make a genetically modified beef patty. So, you know, there just has to be a lot of innovation around whether it's vertical farming or technology for farmers. And it's a very interesting space because we've looked at it a little bit, and I'm sure you know better than I do, not every farmer wants to like get with the technological times. They really have to be convinced that it's easy and it will lead to more yield or more dollars for them. And so I think there's a huge revolution that needs to happen on the growing side, you know, not just on the lab side.
Yeah. There's some cool initiatives going on with that in terms of ag tech. Seeds and Chips, their team in Europe, which is putting a ton of resources and research behind that. Everything from drone to a new way of aquaponics, changing the whole dynamic of how they're growing food in general. So there are some big ones. When you're looking at new age or kind of the next era of startups, because what we are finding, you know, both in food and in tech, is this evolution. It's no longer the Twitter and Facebook kind of tech company anymore. Now these guys are, I feel, even sharper and better than what we saw just a decade ago in terms. So what are you looking for in a startup today to get behind them or help them with a brand development?
Yeah, I think, you know, we wrote a book a couple years ago called Shortcut Your Startup that was all about kind of what we're looking for. Our blueprint is what we're doing as entrepreneurs and now what we're kind of trying to do with M13. You know, I think what we really look for now, I mean, there's things that everyone would say, meaning the entrepreneur. I think after you have a certain amount of pattern recognition, you just know if he or she has that it thing. In the world we live in, I certainly look for vision because, you know, you think no one would have believed Elon Musk 10 years ago. No one would have believed Ethan Brown from Beyond Meat 10 years ago. And so I think you really need the vision. But I like to bring it down to that MVP, you know, that minimum viable product. I love the products that start. And I like to say kind of like almost take it to your local farmer's market. That can be figuratively or literally. But I like to see something where you start in some small scale and you're able to demonstrate that there's like a real need for the economics really scale. Because, you know, we were talking off camera here about direct-to-consumer brands. It's great to be a direct-to-consumer brand. If you're losing money on every sale and there's no way to make that scale, meaning your supply chain doesn't get cheaper, your fixed costs. All you're doing is, putting good money after bad. So it's really a question of whether you have, let's say, profitable unit economics. I'm not of the camp that every high-flying tech company that goes public needs to be profitable. But I am of the mindset that they all have to have a very clear path to profitability, greater than we've seen with most of them. So it really comes down to, can, a Beyond Meat, do you see the positive unit economics so that when they get in X thousand number of doors and they bring their supply chain costs down, it's a very profitable company.
Yeah, I think that is a lost art in business today, is getting the unit economics into a position where there is a path to profit.
Yeah.
But more so, I mean, that's where it kind of really gets interesting, because of valuation and that magic number that
one of my favorite chapters in our book, we call it Know Whether You're a Sailboat or a Speedboat.
Okay.
And the metaphor goes something like this. Everyone wants to be a speedboat because you read about Lyft and Pinterest and Beyond Meat, so that's a speedboat. Speedboat takes gasoline and a whole lot of it. Gasoline is obviously a metaphor for dollars and other things. A sailboat, you kind of wait out there, you wait for a gust of wind to come. You get a little gust, then the wind dies down, you get a little gust, but you're kind of still moving up and to the right, as we say.
Interesting.
We like to say that everyone wants to be a speedboat. When you think about it, 99% of companies need to start out as a sailboat. But once you really find that product market fit, once you find that profitable unit economics, then you can put your sail down and become a speedboat. But once you put it down, there's no putting the sail back up. And so, we've seen it with a lot of companies. There's a beverage brand that I was on the board of for 6 years called Kavita. They were the first ones to do kind of sparkling probiotics and kombuchas. They were really ahead of the probiotic curve. Now it's kind of everywhere. But if they tried to be a speedboat when the market wasn't ready, they would run out of gas in the middle of the ocean. They were a sailboat until they eventually saw that they were at that inflection point to become a speedboat.
I love that analysis, because we see that in food today. It's a huge factor. And you guys heard it, of course, right here at the Winter Fancy Food Show. So, Courtney, thanks for stopping in.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Absolutely. So make sure and stay tuned right here for more great coverage from the Winter Fancy Food Show. We'll catch you soon.